Hello, I'm Theo Paphitis, and you are watching the Cornwall channel.
Today we're on a very special road trip to meet a very, very important person. He's one of the country's top businessmen, and I have something in common with him. We both like cars. To avoid embarrassment, I've parked the Morris Minor round the corner. I so didn't want to show his car up. I'm pretty sure this is his car, judging by the number plate. But whose is it? Let's go meet him now. My guest today emigrated from Cyprus with his family at the age of 6. As a child, he was always the boisterous one who could never sleep, a trait I believe he still has to this day. The week before he left for England, his grandfather gave him his inheritance, a small collection of large pennies. This was to become known as his stash, his walking the street money. We'll come back to that later. Arriving in the UK, the family moved to the quiet area of Old Trafford in Manchester. That is quiet until the first Saturday, of course, home of Manchester United. He discovered football. At the age of 9, the family moved to a tenement building in North London in Tufnell Park. He is, in his own words, the man off the telly, not I am a shopkeeper. He is, of course, the retail magnate, an entrepreneur, the very amazing Theo Paphitis. Theo, thank you so much for sparing a bit of, I know, very valuable time.
What a dramatic introduction. I could sit here all day. Could you do that again?
Well, we could, but I want to hear about you.
I nearly liked myself listening to that.
Well, as I said, thank you. And I mentioned the tenement block because I want to go right back to your early time in North London, because there's a difference between being a businessman and an entrepreneur. And I want you to tell me a certain story about what it is to be an entrepreneur. About a parachute?
The parachute. The parachute. We were on the 4th floor of this tenement block with no lift. And probably won't understand what this means, but there used to be chutes at every landing where you put the rubbish down. And the garden was a balcony, basically. And I was bored. And I decided, looking down from the balcony, that I had nothing to do. And I just watched an army film. I thought, well, wouldn't it be good if I just parachuted down rather than going down the stairs? And I got an old sheet together. And I thought, all I've got to do is just hold it, jump. And that should do it. Then I thought, you know what, it sounds a bit risky. I don't like heights anyway. So I thought what I'll do is try and attach it to a sack of potatoes and do a test run first. And the sack of potatoes literally went down like a sack of potatoes and spluttered at the speed of sound towards the floor. So that was my first lesson in testing things first before actually doing them.
Because a lot of people seem to think entrepreneurs just splash the cash here, there and everywhere, and they don't think. Some people perhaps do, but...
I don't actually take risks.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I've never ever bet the farm, and every particular risk I take or gamble I take is calculated, and the risk-reward ratio analysed. And if you do that, you got more chances of winning some than losing some.
At school, you suffered from dyslexia, and your first job was as a tea-boy cleric in Ryman Dean. And I suppose...
Cleric? It's a posh word. Clerk. Cleric. It sounds like you're something of the cloth.
Well, whatever you like. We'll call it.
My English language isn't obviously to your standards. Now, I was basically assistant to the tea boy.
Excellent. Well, that's a very good start. But I mean, you had to write things out, which I mean, if you're dyslexic, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, fancy getting a job in an office when you can't read or write.
Right. But there was a girl there, wasn't there? Luckily enough, there was a girl there. And I'd like you to tell me what that girl did for you. What did she buy? Where did she buy it from? And what happened to her?
It's strange, but I was 16 at the time when I got this job. And it's after being turned down by Well, I lost count of the number of rejection letters that I'd received, and I couldn't stay on at school because I wasn't academic, I was struggling at school. So I had to get a job, and in the end, any job would do. I mean, it literally got to that stage. I needed a job, and I had all sorts of highfalutin aspirations about what I wanted to achieve. And having got this office job, which was quite amazing because it's the last knockings of the summer sort of intakes, and they just happened to have a vacancy, and the government had just happened to install a fantastic new scheme, which meant if you hired someone without previous working experience, they would pay for their salary for a year. So you got a £1,500 allowance from the government to employ somebody who hasn't had a job before. And guess what my salary was?
£20 a week.
£1,500 a year, that's right. So so that was it, simple. I got a job. They just said, look, this halfway, it's going to cost us nothing. He's here. All he has to do is make the tea. Even he can make the tea. And now and again, when he's not making the tea, he can do some filing. Mistake number one, the halfwit was dyslexic, so filing was probably going to be a bridge too far for both of us, really. So really, you start growing up and you start realising, as that great philosopher once said, that Clintos Ispudos, a good man must know his limitations.
Right.
And Magnum Force. Or Dirty Harry, actually.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Not Magnum Force. That was another great film. So I very quickly learnt my limitations. And without dealing with those issues, there was not going to be a future. So I had to teach myself again to write. And having met the current Mrs. P as a receptionist in that self-same business, we walked into Ryman in...
Who?
Ryman, you've heard of them? Stationer.
No.
Stationer. Borough High Street. Borough High Street.
Right, Ryman,
yeah,
yes.
been there 120 years this year, allegedly.
So what
bought a
did...
calligraphy set and a dictionary.
That's fantastic.
Because don't forget, there was no computers in those days. Calculators had only just been invented. So, you know, that was like thousands of pounds to have a calculator. So it was a small pocket dictionary and a calligraphy set. And I sat there night after night, teaching myself again to write smartly. And then part of the job was obviously doing labels for these files. So all of a sudden, all these labels started looking very nice and pretty. And the gentlemen and the ladies of the city thought, God, this is an intelligent young man who works. See, look how well he writes, and he must be a man of letters and great intellect, which is all, of course, untrue. But I didn't. I hesitated to point that fact out to them, and we just went from there, really. And I started writing all the line slips that needed to go to the underwriters to be endorsed. And it was the same words, which was great. So once you learnt those words, it was quite repetitive. But there was no computers. I mean, there was typewriters and a pen. And mine was much neater in a pen. So I was quite popular, and I would be sitting there knocking out these...
In longhand,
these line slips, all day long. So my tea making got gradually worse. But then it became... mundane and monotonous, to be
so you got
perfectly frank.
Was it a couple of years you were there?
I did that. I did that years, and then realised that it wasn't for me.
But what I think is rather lovely is that's where you met. What I really love is that Mrs. P is rather like Captain Mannering's wife. We never see her. You created this wonderful Mrs. P, and she's always just out of sight. And in your book, it's a love affair of two things, I think. It's a love affair with Mrs. P and a love affair with the world of business. But anyway, we digress a bit. I'd like to actually... You then had your first taste of retail. You went to I don't know at the time.
Watches of Switzerland in Old Bond Street. It was another brand of theirs, owned by the business, which was called Time, T-Y-M-E at the time. And that was my first taste of retail, and that was really when I realised that I love this. I could do this all day long. I couldn't wait to get to work in the morning. And I made more money.
And that comes out in the passion. And tell me about the very first £1,600 sale you made, and where you slightly went wrong with the manager. Coming back to being theatrical.
That's all part of life's rich learning curves as a 16, 18-year-old coming out of North London, where it was all right to be butch and manly, and these sort of things were something that you'd never encountered. I mean, just if you go back, we are now talking about a time where it was still, people still remembered the war, believe it or not. It was, whereas now you talk about the Second World War. I mean, it was just deep in history. It is now very much deep in history. At that time, there was still houses that had been bombed and were still
not done up
or demolished. So the world, it was a fast changing pace, and I think during my lifetime, I'm very lucky to have lived in a world that has changed at such a rapid pace, because we've gone through millenniums where the world hasn't changed that much.
And Never it's been mind. A golden age.
It has been an incredible age. So for me, the experience of growing up and the world changing was an age of discovery. And to actually meet somebody that was gay was never in my psyche to realise
who was gay?
Pardon?
Who was
gay?
Well,
I was come on to it. It was never in my psyche or even on my radar. Never mind to actually understand. So it was, my first sale was to a very, very elegant elderly gentleman who was well bred, who brought his nephew in to make a purchase. And on my first day, I managed to sell him a Rolex watch. I was ecstatic, absolutely ecstatic. And I ran downstairs where the stockroom was and what was classed as a staff room stroke office, which was basically a manky old sofa and a table, explaining to my manager, Derek Jeeves, that who had great faith in me, bless him, great faith in me. And I owe most of my retail expertise from his teachings, that I've made this sale. And how this wonderful aristocratic gentleman had come in and bought a watch for his nephew. And he congratulated me and said, well done. And I said, I was quite excited. And he said, well done. And he'll be in next week with another nephew to buy another watch. I said, well, how many nephews has he got? And he looked at me. And he looked at me. And the penny still hadn't dropped. It was just not even on my radar.
There was no reason I should. It was
no. So he said to me, that's not his nephew. I said, it wasn't his nephew? I said, he's not queer, is he? And then he said, strange enough, yes, as if you want to call it that. He said, and so am I. Anyway, so it was like, no gaydar, nothing. It was brilliant, and that, of course, that brought you into the world, or a totally different world, and all that part of growing from coming from the wrong side of the tracks. And it's still an experience in life. Every day you learn, and you can add to your armory of as a person. And your skill set. So that was a wonderful learning experience. I put in my
in your book, the passion of that first sale. It was like a sort of girl going to her first ball.
Incredible.
It really comes across.
And Derek became a family friend for years and years and years to come. So it was very grateful to him.
And then you were wanting to be on the up, so you then moved on from the shop to sort of finance. After the shop?
Yeah, it was only a case that I realised that time needed to move on, and I was, as much as I enjoyed my passion, I needed to make more money, and I needed to use my skills appropriately, hone my skills, learn about business, learn about finance, and that I needed to move on. I couldn't just be a shop assistant or a store manager for the rest of my life. That wasn't really what my ambitions were. I needed to get some other skills, and that's what I went to do.
You did, and you then sort of, at 23, started your own business and went it alone. And can I just say, was it perhaps the best thing that anyone ever said to you, that you could end up selling matchsticks on Victoria Station? Could you tell me about that?
It's when I first started my own business, and I left the comforts and the security of a well-paid job, a company car, subsidised mortgage. Used to get subsidised mortgages in those days. There was no tax penalty to having that.
Was it Myris? Was it Myris or something? You had tax relief on the first 30,000.
Oh, there was that as well. But
yes.
this was the fact that my mortgage, everyone else's mortgage was like 12%.
And
interest
you
rate,
could get
and because I worked for Legal and General, our mortgage was like 2%. So you could take a big mortgage and pay very little back because it was subsidised by the company. So I used to work for L&G, and I said I left that well-paid security job, everything, car, cheap mortgage, to start my own business. And last day, I was called in to see the area director, who made his one and only play to actually secure my services further. I wonder why I never did it earlier, actually, but there we are. But by that time, I'd already set up office just around the corner. And bless him. At the end of it, when you realise, no, strange enough, that's what one ex-employer I'm not in touch with. But I do owe him just as much as I owe Derek, to be honest with you. And as much as I love Derek, and this guy's name was Tim. I think Tim played his part as well in my progression. When he said, well, you'll end up selling matches at Victoria Station. That's what will happen to you, setting up business at the tender age of about 22.
Did it make you angry, that, or spur you on?
It gave me every motivation I required, because he was an arrogant twit, to be honest with you. Overpaid, over-promoted, and full of his own self-importance. Apart from that, he was a lovely individual.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because we've actually got him.
Yeah, I'd have to look very low because he's incredibly short as well. So I started to, my eye line went down.
So anyway, you learnt how to sort of refinance businesses.
Indeed.
And that sort of, in the sort of recession of the sort of 90s and 80s, everyone was sort of going down like 10-pin bowling things. Businesses were going thing, but you turned it around so that you actually managed to save businesses by sort of refinancing and then making money out of them, which is.
I think the point. Interestingly enough, I'm going to a function tonight, and I've been asked to give a speech or give a few words prior to an awards ceremony, and one of the things they asked me to talk about is actually doing business in the recession and opportunities within the recession. And the reality is there's just as many opportunities when things are bad as when things are good. You've really got to open your eyes, and you can't
put your head in the ground and say it's all doom and gloom.
Exactly, you just cut your suit according to your cloth, and there's you end up seeing crumbs from much bigger tables that other people can't deal with. There's more opportunities for smaller businesses in a recession than there is in an upturn, to be perfectly frank with you. So, by opportunities, I mean sustainable opportunities. I'm not talking about flunky one-hit wonders. We are talking about sustainable building up a business. So, and that's really what I saw in those dismal days. I was able to make a living from it.
And then your first big turnaround was Astra Industrial Group.
Yeah, that was a proper turnaround. That was from bad to good, and from good to bad. I'd done the whole circle, and that was a real eye-opening experience. Again, when you think you're confident and you know everything, and you're not quite walking on water, but if there was some water on there, you were tempted to have a go.
Yes.
So it's a good slap down, to be honest with you. And I learned that if I'm out my comfort zone, I shouldn't be. And I should never put myself in a situation where I'm out my comfort zone. And it's if I am going to be in a situation where I'm out my comfort zone, it's for me to make it my comfort zone before doing it. And I was working and relying on an environment that I didn't understand. And that was a deep, deep lesson. And at the time, did not seem a great lesson, I must be honest with you. It seemed pretty disastrous. But it was probably another of these great lessons you have in life, that you just don't appreciate how valuable it really is for much later in life, when you realize you've taken decision after decision after decision based on those experiences. And these decisions have been really good decisions for you. But really, when you break them down and find out why you took the decisions you took, you go back really to those nuggets of experiences that you had that were defining.
You grow.
Exactly.
I'm glad you mentioned water, because you then took on Splash that went splosh, really.
Well, that was part and parcel of the same thing, to be honest with you. And that was, you pretty well bet the farm, went out your comfort zone, you relied on other people for things you didn't understand. If you rely on other people, make sure you can do the job as well. So, all those things, I say to people, it's never, ever, ever nice getting things wrong. It's never, ever nice ending up on your arse. But when you do,
you
learn and use it, and it will, I promise you, will not be wasted.
Well, in my intro, I mentioned your inheritance, those large...
My bag of pennies, old
pennies.
English copper pennies.
And you always had your sort of streetwalking money, and that came into use with movie media. Can you tell me about that? You were down to the penny. Well, not pennies, but
we can, and we're in danger of videoing the whole book at this rate. But listen, always have your walking the street money. I've always said that. I'll continue to say that, because when things go wrong, that allows you to buy back into the game. And certainly when things went wrong at Astra and Splash for me, just having a little bit of money put to one side allowed me to buy back into the game, and this time play the game a lot better.
Right.
So always have some walking the street money, have something tucked away for a rainy day. Again, it sounds like something your granny might tell you, but your granny was right. Grannies normally are, actually, in fairness. So that experience.
And the mothers too.
Yeah, sometimes. So, always have something put to one side.
But you then, you sort of got that going, and then you decided you wanted another challenge, and you went into phones.
Well, for me, it was a natural progression. Technology I like, and as technology evolves, there's opportunities. We've seen some great technological businesses, IT businesses, that have sprung up just in the last 5 years that you'd never heard of before, that are now multi-billion dollar companies. Technology is something that you can get involved in very early doors and actually grow very, very quickly. And mobile phones were new at the time. And that's something that seemed of interest. I got bored with it very rapidly because it wasn't an industry that made sense at the time from the perspective of...
You'd sell them at a loss.
We did, exactly. You bought them and sold them at loss, and you relied on the largesse of whichever mobile operator you were working with at the time to pay you a kickback, a commission. And sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. So you taking on long-term commitments like shops and all sorts of things, just purely and relying on ad hoc income, it goes against the grain of everything I'd learned previously. Some people took the gamble and did very, very well, but sometimes people take gambles on things they don't understand and it works out for them, and sometimes it doesn't.
The thing is to keep the costs down, is
Exactly.
it not? And what you didn't do is rush out and buy a load of shops.
No, I did.
And tell me the amazing thing.
I did a deal with a company that I'd bought a calligraphy set from all those years ago, Ryman Stationers, and who allowed me to have concessions within their stores. So,
I mean, you didn't have to be tied into long leases or freeholds.
Correct. And that then, from me, allowed me to grow quickly. And then, God knows how, but it did. Things went wrong for Ryman Stationers. Their parent company, Pentos, went into administration. And I was fortunate enough to look around, get all my coppers together, all my walking the street money, and buy the business.
Well, if anybody's interested in being in business or being an entrepreneur, the pages of the purchase of Ryman's, I had to read it, I think, 3 times. It was so exciting. I found it hugely exciting.
Well, then we'll have to get people to buy the book and they can read all about
well,
it.
We don't want to talk too much about the book because there's lots more in it that I haven't mentioned. So please do buy the book. It is here.
It is.
Is it in Ryman's?
It's not in Ryman's.
Right.
It's in good bookshops. It's in its 12th reprint at the moment, so it's doing all right.
Well, that's fantastic. But it is. It was a page turner. The buying of Ryman's and what I thought was the last bit of the deal was the rents. You'd done all the paperwork and then they suddenly said the rents are due the week after next. And what did you have to do?
It was a key defining moment, as there is many in those. But listen, buying any business is a challenge. But when you know it's right and you've got the feeling it's right,
it's from there, isn't it?
You do then have to go that extra mile. And Lady Fortune needs to smile on you as well. Always remember that. I mean, anybody who thinks that it's all about them, it's wrong. Lady Fortune plays a part in our lives, and Mr. Bad Unfortune plays his part as well sometimes. So, a whole lot of things come together to make that possible. And certainly some energy from me, some drive, some native cunning, experience, you name it, streetwise, it all played a part.
And then, well, you went on to buy lingerie businesses.
I think at that stage what happened to me was I was at home. I'd arrived home. That was it. And from then onwards, the die was cast. The blueprint was there. The DNA had evolved. I'd reached my 30s, mids, and it took me to my mid 30s to find who I was and what I did best. And what worked for me as an individual. And on the way, some battle scars, some pain, some anguish, some tears, a reasonable amount of laughter as well. But, I was formed. I was who I was going to be. So it takes that long. So it's very strange when you hear sometimes when you go, school kids say, I don't know what I want to do, Mr. Paphitis, can you give me any advice? I don't know what my career path is. Well, it's unlikely. Very few people are blessed to say, this is what I want to be at the age of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. It's all part of life's growing up and experiences that actually show you what you want. So it's not wrong to go and try jobs. And you might not like them, and it's not wrong for people to move around early in their career to find what really works for them. And the advice I give them is follow your passion. If you can follow your passion, you're likely to be good.
And do something you enjoy.
Because you're a long time dead. And then it's too late to have regrets.
Well, during all this period, you spent 8 years chairman of the Millwall Football Club, and you took it out of administration and took it into the FA final. What did you learn from Millwall?
What I learned from Millwall, lots and lots and lots. And Millwall for me was a labour of love. It was a passion. I've never taken drugs. I hate drugs. I detest people who take drugs. And if you're after a high and a low, just visit the Den. You get highs and you'll get lows. And football does that for you. It gave me some incredible highs, you know, going to Wembley, getting to the FA Cup final, getting into Europe, getting promotion. And we had some terrible lows where we had some problems in the stadium. I got dragged up to New Scotland Yard and, you know, chained to a chair, and a truncheon was used on my kneecaps and my fingers by the commissioner. Not that literally, obviously, he didn't do things like that verbally, but it might as well have been. You know, it was just a marvellous experience. It was some of the best 8 years of my life, very competitive. Certainly every Saturday shortened your lifespan by several years, but it was fabulously passionate, and I am a passionate person, and that gave me that, you know, allowed me to exert that passion and use that passion, and of course at the end of it, introduced me to something new, the media.
Yes, and we had Dragon's Den, which I believe you're bowing out of.
I've retired. They're filming a new series now, which is just finished. Will be out later on this year. So, but without me, I've done my.
Will you miss it?
I miss it terribly. And talking to the guys when they were filming, you know, was strange. Talking to them when they were filming, and I think I sit in my chair for the last time the day before filming started, but because I was up there.
Buy it?
No. But the BBC do own it. BBC do own it. They assured me they bought them off the hire company.
I think you should have it.
But I think I should have it as well. I think if they change shares.
Now look here, BBC. I'm saying here that Theo should have that chair, please. So anyway, what I think is so amazing, it's not the money that's the big turn on anymore, is it?
No, the money. I don't get out of bed for money in the morning. That can't. I love getting to work in the morning, and I love working till the wee small hours because I'm a night owl. But it's not. You don't get out of bed in the morning to make money anymore. For me, it's a scorecard. It's a way of keeping score. Accountant does the numbers at the end of the year, tells you what your tax you owe, and you know, it's a boy done good or boy done bad. It really is a byproduct. It's a scorecard. That's what it is now. I'm very fortunate enough to do something I'm passionate about, and I can tell you I've set my retirement date, which is when I die, basically, because I just want to do what I do
and enjoy it.
And enjoy it forever.
Well, I've had lots of messages from people down in Cornwall saying we'd very much like you to come down and do something in Cornwall, and perhaps there's a business centre at the airport, I understand, at Newquay Airport. So if you can manage to pop down to Cornwall and encourage people down there.
It would be a pleasure. I mean, Cornwall's a lovely part of the world. I am now actively searching for another UK property, and I can't think of a better place to have it. So if anybody's got any great ideas about Cornwall, send them down, please.
Well, that's great. And I was in Cornwall yesterday. I got back very late last night, and a little bird said to me that you know, you like fishing. With a granite top, sort of little person said. And Theo, you've always been in the right place at the right time. So, on behalf of Cornwall, can I give you a place?
Fantastic. Well, there we are. And that will take pride and place on my desk and remind me about Cornwall. How's that?
That's marvellous.
Excellent.
Paphitis, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.